What happens when Hollywood's wildest comedian goes off-script on live TV? Jim Carrey, known for his fearless honesty and unpredictable humor, walked onto Jimmy Kimmel Live and did something so bizarre, so unexpected, that it left both the audience and Kimmel himself frozen. Within seconds, a simple gesture turned into a storm of speculation. Whispers about secret symbols, hidden meanings, and the side of Hollywood we're never supposed to see. Was Carrey mocking the system or exposing something bigger? What he did that night still has people talking. Jim Carrey's outspoken nature. Jim Carrey has never been the type to stay silent, and this time, when he called out Jimmy Kimmel, he did it with the kind of sharp honesty that only he could pull off. The world has seen him wear dozens of masks, from the rubber-faced comedian in The Mask to the tragic dreamer in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But behind all the characters is a man who's never been afraid to speak his truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes people. Over the years, Carrey's voice has grown bolder, more unapologetic, and far more willing to shake Hollywood's carefully polished surface. Carrey rose to global fame in the 1990s and became a household name through characters that pushed physical comedy to its limit. But as his career evolved, Carrey proved that his talent went far beyond slapstick by showing a side of himself that was thoughtful, emotional, and fearless. This fearlessness has defined his off-screen persona too. Unlike many actors who carefully protect their image, Carrey speaks without a filter. He's never been shy about his political opinions or his frustrations with the state of the world. In fact, he's often aligned with progressive ideals and has been one of the loudest celebrity critics of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. During interviews and public appearances, he's consistently called out what he views as dishonesty and corruption, sometimes with biting humor, other times with clear moral conviction. Carrey's advocacy spans several causes. He's been a longtime supporter of universal health care, often pointing to Canada's system as proof that compassionate healthcare is possible. On Real Time with Bill Maher, he once praised the Canadian model, saying that societies must learn to take care of their people, not treat healthcare as a luxury. He's also been outspoken on firearms control, releasing the satirical short Cold Dead Hand in 2013, a musical parody that mocked America's obsession with firearms. But Carrey doesn't just use interviews to make a point. He paints it, literally. Over the past decade, he's built an entirely new reputation as a political artist, creating vivid and often brutal caricatures of politicians and public figures. His art has taken aim at everyone from Donald Trump and Sarah Huckabee Sanders to international figures like Mussolini. The paintings are bold, sometimes grotesque, and deliberately provocative, each one a statement against what he sees as the moral decay of leadership and the erosion of truth. Through his art, Carrey has managed to express what words often can't. He's poured his frustration, hope, and defiance onto the canvas, turning his studio into a kind of visual protest. When he began posting these works online, they quickly went viral. Some praised him for his courage, while others mocked or attacked him. But for Carrey, that's the point. He's focused on forcing people to confront uncomfortable realities. This unfiltered honesty runs through everything he does. In 2020, he published an essay in The Atlantic titled Truth, Justice, and a World Without Trump. It wasn't just political commentary, it was a reflection of his deep belief that art and truth are inseparable. He argued that society had traded empathy for spectacle, and that it was time to reclaim a sense of moral responsibility. The piece was raw and unapologetic, and it reminded readers that Carrey's worldview has always been about searching for something real, even in an industry built on illusion. In interviews, he often talks about ego, fame, and identity, as if he's pulling back the curtain on the entire entertainment world. When Carrey says something, it sounds like someone who's seen too much of the game and no longer cares to play by its rules. His words can be disarming, even unsettling, because he doesn't perform them. He means them. So when he turned that same honesty toward Jimmy Kimmel, a man who's known for dishing out jokes but not always for taking them, No one expected what would happen next. But most people don't realize that Carrey's fearless and outspoken nature was born from a lifetime of struggle, frustration, and controversy. This is the side of Jim Carrey that Hollywood has tried, again and again, to keep under wraps. When Carrey crossed the line. One of the most defining moments in Jim Carrey's journey came in 2018, during an event that had nothing to do with Hollywood. Carrey was in Hawaii when a terrifying message flashed across every phone. A missile was heading toward the island, and impact was imminent. Residents were told they had minutes, 10 at most, to live. It was a false alert, sent in error, but no one knew that at the time. For those 10 minutes, Jim Carrey believed the end had come. Later, he described the experience as strangely peaceful. Instead of panic, he said he felt a deep sense of acceptance, a calm realization that all the chaos, fame, and noise of life meant very little in the face of mortality. That single moment, standing at the edge of what he thought was his last sunrise, marked a turning point in how he viewed existence. But long before that false alarm, Carrey had already been fighting invisible battles. He's spoken openly about his struggles with depression, describing it not as sadness, but as a deep exhaustion with the self he had to perform for the world. In interviews, he's been honest about periods of despair and disillusionment, moments when he felt like everything he'd worked for, from fame to fortune, had lost its meaning. But instead of hiding this darkness, Carrey has chosen to confront things differently. He's dissected it in public, turning it into something others could understand. He's talked about his search for spiritual awakening, saying that he no longer identifies with the Jim Carrey everyone else sees, and that the idea of the self, fame, and identity are illusions. As his philosophy deepened, his lifestyle changed too. Over time, Carrey stepped away from the spotlight, choosing isolation and introspection over red carpets and interviews. But even as he retreated inward, life threw him another challenge that would test every part of his emotional and spiritual resilience. In 2015, his ex-girlfriend, Catriona White, passed away under tragic circumstances. The loss was devastating, and the aftermath even more brutal. In 2016, White's estranged husband and mother filed wrongful death lawsuits against Carrey, accusing him of providing prescription medication under a false name and contributing to her death. The allegations sent shockwaves through the media. Headlines painted him in every possible light: grieving lover, reckless celebrity, villain, victim. It became a public trial of his character, fought not only in courtrooms but also in tabloids and online speculation. Carrey denied all the claims, maintaining that the accusations were cruel and unfounded. Years later, in 2018, both lawsuits were dismissed, but the damage had already been done. The case forced Carrey to relive an incredibly painful chapter of his life under the harsh glare of public judgment. The experience left a mark that no movie, no award, and no public apology could erase. It also deepened his skepticism of fame and the media machine that feeds on celebrity pain. Still, that survival came with a price, because while Carrey's spiritual journey gave him peace, it also made him more outspoken, more unfiltered, and sometimes more willing to confront hypocrisy wherever he sees it, even if that means calling out powerful people on live television. In 2008, Jim Carrey was already one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment. But that year, he found himself in headlines for something far more divisive than comedy or film. Alongside actress Jenny McCarthy, he joined the Green Our Vaccines campaign, a movement that demanded the removal of certain chemicals from childhood vaccines. Carrey and McCarthy marched in Washington, D.C., surrounded by cameras, signs, and parents who believed vaccines were linked to autism. Though Carrey insisted he wasn't anti-vaccine, his critics accused him of spreading misinformation during a time when public health debates were growing louder. The controversy followed him for years. Carrey maintained that his position wasn't against vaccination itself, but against what he saw as corporate negligence and lack of transparency. Still, the nuance was lost in the noise. To many, it sounded like he was aligning with the anti-vaccine movement, and that label stuck. When California passed a law in 2015 requiring vaccinations for all school children, Carrey spoke out again, this time more harshly. He took to Twitter, calling the policy corporate fascism. The backlash was immediate. Scientists, journalists, and fans criticized him for using his fame to undermine public trust in medicine. Yet, Carrey stood his ground, saying he only wanted safer standards and accountability. But this wasn't the first time Carrey's moral compass had clashed with Hollywood's norms. 2 years earlier, in 2013, he made headlines for an entirely different kind of protest, this time against violence in media. After filming Kick-Ass 2, Carrey publicly announced that he would not promote the movie. The decision came months after the Sandy Hook school tragedy, which deeply affected him. Carrey said he could no longer support content that glorified violence, tweeting that he had a change of heart. His statement stunned the film's cast and marketing team, and although the studio tried to downplay the fallout, the message was clear. Carrey was willing to risk professional backlash to stand by his beliefs. Reactions were mixed. Some admired his integrity and compassion, while others accused him of hypocrisy for taking part in the film in the first place. Director Jeff Wadlow and creator Mark Miller both expressed disappointment, arguing that he had known the movie's tone all along. Yet Carrey didn't backtrack. For him, the moral question outweighed the career consequences. He simply said he could not, in good conscience, promote such a movie at a time when real-life tragedy had made it impossible to separate fiction from pain. And as his political voice grew louder, so did the global reactions to it. By 2022, Carrey's outspoken political art and criticism of world leaders reached a new level of tension when Russia officially banned him from entering the country. The move was part of a wider blacklist, targeting celebrities who had condemned Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Carrey, who had long criticized authoritarianism through his artwork and tweets, responded with characteristic bluntness. He didn't apologize or soften his stance. Instead, he continued posting paintings that ridiculed tyranny and corruption. But not all the backlash came from governments or institutions. In 2019, one of Carrey's political cartoons set off a firestorm in Italy. He had posted a drawing of Benito Mussolini and his mistress Claretta Petacci hanging upside down after their execution in 1945, a powerful historical image, reinterpreted in his usual satirical style. The drawing itself wasn't new, but Carrey's caption reignited a deep national wound. Mussolini's granddaughter, Alessandra Mussolini, who is a politician in Italy, immediately lashed out on Twitter. The online argument quickly spread through international news outlets, with Italians fiercely divided over whether Carrey had crossed a line or simply told the truth about a dark chapter in history. Carrey's honesty has earned him admiration and enemies alike, but it has also placed him in direct opposition to a Hollywood culture that often values silence over truth. That defiance would soon collide with another outspoken figure who built an empire out of late-night humor and celebrity charm. America's late-night provocateur. Jimmy Kimmel has spent more than 2 decades in late-night television, blending comedy, politics, and cultural commentary into one of the most recognizable voices in American entertainment. As the host of Jimmy Kimmel Live since 2003, he's built his reputation on a mix of satire, emotional storytelling, and the kind of viral segments that dominate social media. But along with his sharp humor and political candor has come a long list of controversies, some that made him a symbol of conscience in entertainment, and others that sparked outrage and heated debate. Kimmel's career has always reflected his worldview. He's openly liberal, using his platform to speak out on issues like healthcare, firearm control, and social justice. During the Trump years especially, his show often felt like a late-night counterpoint to the day's political chaos. His monologues frequently targeted conservative figures and policies, and while many applauded him for his boldness, others accused him of turning comedy into activism. This tension between entertainer and advocate has followed him throughout his career, making him one of the most polarizing hosts on television. One of his most defining moments came in 2017, when Kimmel delivered an emotional monologue about his newborn son's heart surgery. Fighting back tears, he recounted the terrifying experience of learning that his son, Billy, was born with a congenital heart defect and needed emergency surgery to survive. But what began as a personal story turned into a national political statement. Kimmel used that moment to call for affordable health care and challenge lawmakers who opposed coverage for pre-existing conditions. His words, "No parent should ever have to decide if they can afford to save their child's life," struck a chord across the country. Soon, politicians began referencing what became known as the Jimmy Kimmel test, a phrase used to measure whether healthcare legislation met the standard of compassion Kimmel had laid out. It was a powerful moment, but also a controversial one. Critics accused him of politicizing his child's illness, while supporters saw him as brave for using his platform to demand reform. Either way, Kimmel had stepped into a new role, no longer just a late-night comedian, but a cultural figure unafraid to tackle issues far beyond jokes and celebrity gossip. This emotional sincerity resurfaced later that same year after a tragic incident in Las Vegas, Kimmel's hometown. During another monologue, he broke down on air as he called for stronger firearm control laws and condemned politicians who offered thoughts and prayers without action. The moment went viral, praised by many for its humanity, but also criticized by those who saw it as politicizing tragedy. But as his voice grew louder on serious issues, older parts of his career began catching up with him. Kimmel had long used edgy humor, the kind that might have slipped by in the early 2000s, but now reads differently in hindsight. One of the most discussed examples came from Jimmy Kimmel Live in 2013, during a recurring sketch called Kids Table. In one segment, a child made an offhand joke suggesting that the U.S. could take drastic steps in China to solve the national debt. The comment aired uncut, sparking outrage among Chinese and Chinese-American communities. Protests erupted outside ABC studios, and Kimmel quickly issued an apology, saying he never intended harm and that the bit had been unscripted and handled poorly. ABC followed with its own apology, but the backlash lingered, showing how easily comedy could cross lines when cultural sensitivity is ignored. That wasn't the only controversy tied to public health debates. In 2015, Kimmel aired a comedic PSA featuring real doctors encouraging people to vaccinate their children. While the video was meant to promote science and mock vaccine misinformation, it reignited old tensions, especially given Carrey's earlier "Green Our Vaccines" campaign. Some parents accused Kimmel of mocking their concerns rather than addressing them, while others praised him for taking a stand. The conversation turned even more divisive in 2021 when Kimmel used his monologue to criticize those who refused vaccines and instead used other medications like ivermectin. He joked that hospitals should prioritize vaccinated patients for ICU beds, and this joke triggered a wave of backlash online, with critics calling it heartless and discriminatory. Kimmel defended the comment as satire, saying he was highlighting the frustration many healthcare workers felt, but the incident exposed how fragile the line between humor and hostility had become. As more of his older material resurfaced, Kimmel faced renewed scrutiny over sketches from his early career. During the height of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, videos emerged of Kimmel wearing blackface to impersonate NBA player Karl Malone and Oprah Winfrey during comedy skits from The Man Show and early Jimmy Kimmel Live episodes. The clips quickly went viral, drawing widespread condemnation. Kimmel released a statement apologizing for the impersonations, saying they were thoughtless and that he regretted them deeply. He temporarily stepped away from the show that summer, though ABC publicly stood by him. Beyond comedy, Kimmel has also been criticized for the way he handled interviews in the past, particularly one with actress Megan Fox in 2009. During the interview, Fox opened up about being asked to do an inappropriate scenes at just 15. Surprisingly, Kimmel laughed it off and joked about it on air, a moment that resurfaced years later amid the hashtag #MeToo movement. Fans revisiting the clip saw it as an example of how Hollywood had normalized the mistreatment of young actresses. Kimmel never addressed the clip directly, but its resurfacing added another layer to his complicated legacy. More recently, in 2023, Kimmel's name surfaced in an online conspiracy theory when NFL star Aaron Rodgers implied that Kimmel might appear on the unreleased Jeffrey Epstein client list. The accusation spread quickly on social media before Kimmel publicly fired back, calling the claim a lie and warning Rodgers that false accusations can have consequences. The story eventually died down, but not before it reminded everyone how easily public figures can get pulled into rumor cycles, regardless of the truth. Over the years, Jimmy Kimmel has learned that being outspoken comes with a price. His mix of humor, advocacy, and emotion has made him one of the most discussed late-night hosts in history. But each controversy has reshaped how audiences see him. And this complex image is exactly what made his unexpected clash with Jim Carrey so explosive. When those two outspoken personalities shared the same stage, it wasn't just another celebrity exchange. It was the collision of two men who've spent their careers saying what others are afraid to say. And for once, the laughter didn't soften the blow. Jim Carrey's shocking allegations. When Jim Carrey appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live trying to promote Dumb and Dumber 2, viewers expected his usual brand of unpredictable humor. But what they got instead was one of the strangest late-night moments ever broadcast. As Carrey walked on stage, he paused before sitting down and formed a triangle with his hands, holding it over his mouth and sticking out his tongue through the center. The audience laughed, assuming it was another one of his eccentric jokes, but then he leaned toward Kimmel and said, "You don't know what this is?" Kimmel said he didn't, laughing awkwardly, clearly unsure of where this was going. Carrey continued by saying, "You don't know, Jimmy Fallon doesn't know, David Letterman doesn't know, and all the comics in show business don't know what this is, right? Come on, Jimmy, seriously, the time is up. People are hyped for this kind of stuff. I'm here tonight to blow the lid off it. To be the whistleblower, I'm sick and tired of the secrets and the lies. It is the secret symbol of the Illuminati, and you are part of it, and it is the all-mocking tongue." Carrey went on to talk about how everyone in show business knew about the secret symbol that's everywhere. The audience kept laughing, but the tone of the room shifted. It was unclear if he was mocking conspiracy theories or hinting at something deeper. As he spoke, Kimmel tried to redirect the interview back to the movie, but Carrey wasn't done. With a grin, he said that television hosts like Kimmel were puppets whose job was to distract the public while the real people pulled the strings behind the scenes, saying, "For years now, talk show hosts, people on television, and people on sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh, and stuff like that, to make you happy and docile so you don't know what's really going on. You know, they get out there, in the woods in a circle, naked, and decide these things. They are trying to turn us into consumer drones." The statement was delivered playfully, but Kimmel's nervous smile suggested he didn't know whether to laugh or move on. Within hours, clips of the exchange flooded YouTube and social media. Conspiracy theorists dissected every second of it, insisting Carrey had exposed the entertainment industry's hidden symbolism. They pointed to the triangle gesture as proof of his rebellion, and called the all-mocking tongue a reference to secret societies controlling media. Others saw it as pure satire, Carrey's way of ridiculing the very idea of celebrity conspiracies. His exaggerated tone and over-the-top gestures fit perfectly with his comedic style. Still, the debate only grew. The video racked up millions of views, and years later, it remains one of the most rewatched interviews in Kimmel's career. The truth is, when Carrey called out the idea of television hosts being puppets, it hit a nerve. Kimmel smiled and nodded, doing what any seasoned host would, keeping the show moving. But the clip's afterlife proved that Carrey's chaotic humor had touched something real. And while Carrey's outburst left audiences questioning who really controls the narrative, Jimmy Kimmel would soon find himself under scrutiny for something entirely different, a controversy that reached beyond jokes and television, sparking headlines about his own future on late-night TV. Kimmel's suspension saga. In September 2025, the late-night world erupted when Jimmy Kimmel Live was suddenly pulled off the air. The reason? A controversial monologue that spiraled far beyond what anyone at ABC expected. During a segment reacting to the shocking passing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, Kimmel made comments that critics said crossed the line. The backlash was immediate, and within days, ABC announced that the show would be placed on temporary hiatus. The suspension stunned viewers. Kimmel, who'd spent 2 decades blending humor and politics, had weathered plenty of controversies before, but never something like this. Conservative figures quickly seized on the moment. President Donald Trump himself took to Truth Social, praising ABC's decision and calling Kimmel an untalented comedian who's been unfunny for years. The post went viral overnight, setting off a fresh wave of online debate about political bias and media accountability. What made the situation even more volatile was the reaction from within the broadcasting world. FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr weighed in publicly, urging local ABC affiliates to consider dropping the show permanently. He accused the network of fostering a toxic double standard and suggested that continuing to air Kimmel would be a disservice to viewers who still believe in journalistic fairness. His comments fueled the controversy even further, sparking fierce arguments about whether government officials should have any say in programming decisions. Behind the scenes, ABC executives were caught in a storm of competing pressures. Advertisers began to hesitate, worried that Kimmel's comments and the political firestorm around them could alienate audiences. Some demanded reassurances that the show wouldn't continue down a more divisive path. Meanwhile, a flood of high-profile celebrities came to Kimmel's defense. Actors, musicians, and fellow hosts condemned the suspension as censorship, calling it an attack on free speech and comedy itself. Social media campaigns under hashtags like Stand with Kimmel and Comedy is Not a Crime began trending within hours. Under mounting public pressure, ABC reinstated Kimmel after a brief hiatus, framing the decision as a defense of creative expression. The network emphasized that comedy, even when provocative, plays a vital role in social commentary. But the controversy was far from over. Several major station groups, including Nexstar and Sinclair affiliates, announced they would no longer air Jimmy Kimmel Live in select markets, citing viewer sensitivity and community standards. That move fractured Kimmel's national reach and reignited debate about who actually decides what Americans can watch. Critics called it corporate censorship disguised as moral concern, while supporters said it was a reasonable business decision to protect local audiences. In fact, the entire episode became a flashpoint in the larger cultural battle over free speech, political polarization, and the boundaries of entertainment. For years, Kimmel had been one of the few late-night hosts willing to mix emotional advocacy with sharp political humor, something that made him beloved by some and despised by others. But the 2025 suspension showed just how fragile that balance had become in an era where every joke can become a headline. ABC's parent company, Disney, was soon pulled into the chaos. Conservative groups threatened boycotts, accusing the company of shielding political bias under the guise of free expression. Progressive fans, on the other hand, warned that silencing voices like Kimmel's would set a dangerous precedent for comedians everywhere. Disney tried to walk a fine line, reaffirming its commitment to open dialogue while urging viewers to engage respectfully, but some damage had been done. The controversy eventually settled, but not without leaving a mark. Kimmel's return episode opened to record ratings, with millions tuning in to see how he would address the ordeal. Instead of apologizing or retreating, he made light of the situation, thanking ABC for not firing him for saying what everyone was already thinking. The audience laughed, but the tension lingered beneath the surface. The suspension didn't just test the boundaries of late-night comedy. It reignited the question of who controls the conversation in modern media. But one thing was certain: the world of late-night television would never feel quite as untouchable again. What do you think? Did Jim Carrey's comments mean something deeper, or was it just a joke? Drop your answers in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.